Welcome to High Five Studios. My name is Andy. This is my shop. My shop is a 2-car garage measuring 20 feet wide by 21 feet deep with a little 6-foot enclave in the back. But you know what? It's pretty cold. Come inside. So like I said, we've got a 2-car garage here. And yes, this whole space right here is open because my wife parks here. So we're able to get 1 car in here. That was part of the deal. As long as she could park, I get to do whatever else I want. So thank you, babe. Now, when you come into the shop, whenever I first set up things, I move my wife's car, and then I've got a couple things on wheels. The first one is an office chair. You've got to have a nice, comfortable place to sit down, as well as when guests come. The next thing I move out of the way, this is my dust cart. So I've got the rigid vacuum with a cyclone separator and a bucket on top. All the accessories within hand reach. This thing is amazing to have in the shop. And this next thing I move out of the way, this is my Craftsman 12-inch bandsaw. It's a little older, but it works for everything I need. I actually got this from my wife's grandfather, so thank you, Biggie. But this thing is awesome. I use it in a lot of my videos. It's a workhorse. It's on wheels. I can roll it in and out of the way. I'll roll it to this side. And then I've got all of this fun area to play. Yeah! But now, let's start the tour. We're gonna start it on this wall, and we'll work our way down. Let's go. All right, we're gonna start on this side of the garage or the shop. We've got the garage door here, which is well insulated. However, it's pretty cold here in Texas right now, hence the hoodie. But let's start on the back wall. We'll work our way all the way around, and then we'll finish at the table saw and the workbench. So on the wall back here, you might see this big contraption, but this is actually my dust collector. It's a Harbor Freight dust collector that I modified quite a bit. We've got the impeller up here. We've got it attached to a dust cyclone down to a 50-gallon barrel. And then we've got a huge HEPA filter on this side with a bucket to catch any debris. And still to this day, I haven't caught any debris in that bucket. It's been really, really awesome. So this thing it's pretty loud when it is running, but it is amazing. So underneath the filter, you'll also see I've got a couple jigs here. I've got my miter sled jig, as well as my picture frame or miter jig, which is awesome. Now you may think that this Rubbermaid barrel isn't sturdy enough to really do dust collection, but it is. It's actually pretty awesome. The only time I've ever had it implode is when all the blast gates were closed. And yes, it did implode, and it was awesome. I wish I could have caught it on camera because it was pretty cool. But I've got the cool combustible sign on there because indeed, sawdust is combustible and it looks pretty awesome. I've got a start-stop switch right here on the wall, which I will be modifying. I want to get it out a little bit so that I can easily access it when I'm at the router table. Right next to it, you'll see I've got this really funky contraption, but this is one of my camera jigs. I use this when I'm doing overhead shots at the workbench or at the table saw. I think this is my maybe 3rd video I ever did, but this thing is really, really cool. Some of those awesome shots that you guys see top down is from this guy. All right, let's talk about the French cleat wall. This thing is awesome. I really enjoyed building this. I built this with my oldest son. Initially, I was just gonna throw some French cleats on the wall, but I figured let's give it some extra support. So I've got 4 4-foot panels of OSB screwed into the wall. We marked all of the studs on the ceiling straight down. We painted it black, and then we threw up our French cleat. And this thing looks awesome. I'm sure if you guys have seen my videos before, what a dramatic effect with that really black wall and the light plywood on the French cleats. If I had to do it all over again, I would probably reduce the size of the French cleats, or basically the distance between the two. I knew I was going to put a lot of big things on the wall, but you know, when you have small things like this, You probably want more space. I could really pack it in there. But overall, this thing has been phenomenal. So starting over here, we've got our router table fence. I can just set that over here on the table. It's within arm's reach. All I got to do is turn. We got some bandsaw blades. We've got the belts for both my sanders, my belt sanders. We've got all of the levels right here. We've got the high five logo. We've got paper towels right here by the workbench. If you don't have paper towels close to workbench, do that. It's awesome. We've got a few of the jigs that we've made. We've got the Craig jig. We've got the angle grinder. We've got the cutoff saw down here. We've got our handheld belt sander that we made a jig for on the wall. We've got our mastermind board, which I don't have anything on there right now, but typically I'll take this off and I'll kind of sketch out my design of whatever I'm building. We've got the world's first Texas katanas. If you haven't seen that video, you should. It's not getting as much love as I thought it would, but look at that thing. How cool is that? So it's nice having weapons in the garage, even though they are all wood. A couple of random things on here. We've got an angle finder, a blow off. We've got my speed square. We've got a mallet that we've made. This thing is awesome. And then we also have our first aid kit. So the first aid kit, I think, is super imperative that you have right next to your workbench. Accidents happen in the shop, and I would rather be prepared for them when they do. Now, I've actually found myself using the alcohol to get sticky residue off things more than I've actually had to stitch myself up, which is awesome. Knock on some wood, right? I got a lot of that here. But having this here is super cool. All right, then moving down the wall, we've got my power station, which was one of my favorite things in the garage or the shop. It's right here next to my workbench. I've got all of my handheld power tools. I've got all of my drills and drivers here. And yes, I'm not married to one brand. We've got Rigid, Milwaukee, Ryobi. We've got all of my drill bits, regular bits. We've got Craig jig bits. We've got multi-tool blades. We've got a whole jig kit. We've got our multi-tool here. We've got all of our chargers. And on top, we've got our nail guns. We've got our battery-powered Ryobi. And then we've got our air. We've got our palm router right here. We've got a battery-powered circular saw. And then a couple more chargers here. Right now for my Dremel that's done charging. And then below it, we have clamps, clamps, clamps. We've got a whole bunch of different kind of spring clamps right here. We've got all of our C clamps. We've got my large level. And then we've got a couple parallel clamps on the right side. So this thing is really, really awesome to have right next to my workbench. I absolutely love it. If you haven't seen this video, please take a look at it. It was my first one. It may not be the best, but a lot of really good information. And then at the end, so the last thing that I have to move, it's on wheels, is my air filtration system. So I don't like dust. My wife doesn't like dust on her car, but not everything I have is hooked up to a dust collector or vacuum. So I just finished the router table, and that was never connected to a dust collector for the longest time, just my table saw. So that's taken care of. But anytime I'm sanding, I'll always hook it up to a vacuum, but it really isn't enough. So I built this, and there's a couple different guys that have built these things online. I'll try to link them down below because there's some really, really good videos. I did it slightly different where I've got all of the air sucking through the fan and into the box where the filters are. But I didn't really build it where the filters could come out and change pretty easily. And that's probably a project I need to work on, is reversing this. But this thing works fantastic for dust and also for paint, especially overspray. It's got a lot of suck. It's pretty cool. So we're gonna roll this out of the way. We'll go to the corner of the shop and then we'll work our way down the long wall. All right, the corner of the shop is where my CNC machine is. This is the X-Carve. I've had this CNC machine for about a decade and it is fantastic. Now it is hobby grade. It's cut out all of my logos, my signs, and several years ago when I used to do some really cool cutting boards, all of my inlays, they were done on this thing, which is pretty fantastic. I've got a power strip on that side of the wall, and then I'll move the power supply over here. I'll hook up my laptop, and then I'll be able to run everything. Now I've got some rope light that I've had, but as you can tell, it's not that bright. So I usually get 1 or 2 of these lights to really brighten it up in here. I can kind of see everything. And I must have went years with an unlevel spoil board. So I would have a high spot to a low spot. So about over an 18-inch span, it would be maybe almost a half an inch. It was pretty bad, maybe a 1/4 inch actually. But anyway, I've got a spoil board cutter now. Everything's nice and flush. One of the projects I'm going to work on is redoing the spoil board, making it perfect and even, and maybe putting in some T-tracks so I can have different clamping things. I've got lots of projects that I want to do on the CNC machine. Is it worth upgrading for me? No, I don't have a big enough shop for it. I mean, 2-car garage, you kind of get what you get. So this is a pretty big corner, and inside it's 4 feet by 4 feet. So it's a pretty big real estate. So below it, I've got a whole bunch of wood storage. And a lot of it is just kind of regular material, a lot of 2x4s, a lot of MDF scraps, a little bit of plywood. This thing is pretty deep. And then on this side is pallet on pallet on pallet, full of different things. So lots of 2x4s in here. And then my longer offcuts go in here, my nicer hardwood, they'll kind of go on this side. And then above that, I've got some pretty nice hardwood on that side. And then over here is a whole bunch of cedar. So we built a fence a couple years ago, and I have a whole bunch of kind of like 2-inch to 18 inches cedar. So I've got all that stored right there. And then above it is just a whole bunch of storage. So I've got lots of different cardboard boxes when I was doing all of my cutting boards. I've got some templates here. This is to make an outside chair. We've got all of my painting supplies here. We got a couple of light boxes back there. And then above it, some tackle gears, my fishing gear, and then a whole bunch of random things. I've got all my pressure washing stuff up there. I've got some heavy dew cleaner up there, my old router, and then other odds and ends, you know, those things that you just don't use that often. I just throw it up there. Moving on down. All right, working our way down the wall, we get to basically our miter station. Now this is a stripped down version. I used to have a whole bunch of shelves here. I broke all those down as I moved everything over to the power station. So this is bare bones. I've got a big project for this coming up soon that's also going to incorporate this awesome radial arm saw that I've got from my wife's grandfather. So ideally, I'm going to have a miter saw and the radial arm saw on one kind of workbench. But this thing is going to have to be redone. So we're going to work on that. I've got my lunchbox planer. So typically I'll take the DeWalt planer, I'll set it on the workbench, and we'll work through that. I'll hook it up to the dust collection on this side. So I do have a 4-inch flex hose that runs out of the hard pipe. So I'll set it over there. We've got some hardwood scraps. Once again, all of the the wood down here. And then below, so mind you, I built this workbench out of all scrap wood that I got 10 years ago. And I really had no idea what I was doing. I had no kind of plan in my head of what I was building. I was just building. So I worked my way down all the way to the end when I added the CNC. So there's going to be some discrepancy on materials used. And also when you look at levelness or straightness, even squareness, it's non-existent in a couple different places, but I think that's what gives us some character. One thing I will pride myself on is everything on this workbench is rock solid. It is not moving. I stand on this thing all the time because now I've got a wood rack above me. I store my nicer hardwoods down here, and then 2x4s here, and then MDF scraps here. Usually there is where I build off my French cleats. So I've got that on the wall. So that's a good 16 feet of wood storage. So it's really low right now. I've done a lot of projects, which is really awesome. All right, and below the radial arm saw, we've got a scroll saw and a couple different drawers. So the scroll saw is on drawer slides. It's super dirty because it gets used, not as much as it should, but this thing is just a scroll saw picked up from Harbor Freight, and I absolutely like it. It's small enough where I can store it, but it does the job I need. So typically I'll roll my chair over here, I'll put a light right here, and I'll just get scrolling. So I know times have changed and the definition of scrolling is mostly on your phone now, but when I scroll right here. Below that is a drawer of all the user manuals for every tool that I have. Have I ever pulled one out to look at it? No, I haven't, but I have everything here if I need it. If I need a part number for a tool, maybe a troubleshooting guide, it's all in this drawer, which is pretty awesome. And then below that is just a whole bunch of T-track, different things to make jigs. I've got some more drawer slides, some bar stock, and some shelf brackets, metal shelf brackets, which I haven't used in a long time. And typically, for here, I'll just get stuff out for to make jigs, mostly the T-track as of late. Very nice to have. All super friction fit, perfectly built, obviously. All right, and then another star of the show is the miter station, most specifically, the Cobalt miter saw. I've had this 10-inch miter saw for a long, long time. It is fantastic. Almost every project, the miter saw, as well as the table saw, comes into play. This thing is a beast. I've got my table built right level to it on both sides, which is pretty fantastic. I tried to build a cavity to contain as much dust as possible, and for the most part, it works okay. I take off my speed squares. I can pull the door off if I need to articulate it and cut any different angle, right? So I had to do 45s not too long ago on a project, as well as 22.5. But I'm able to articulate the saw that way. I pull the door off and I'm able to get to work. Kind of puts right back in place, friction fit. Above that, we've got my newest belt sander, just kind of a small one. I got this thing when I was doing the daggers, because you can't build daggers if you don't have a tiny belt sander. So that thing worked out great. I've got some projects here that I'm going to be working on soon. I've got my speaker. I always have music unless I'm filming. Below the miter saw, I used to have my vacuum, but now I've got a portable workbench. I've got all of my piping and connectors for the dust collector, 4-inch, some reducers. I've got a couple of projects down here, as well as a dolly. I also have one of my sanders right there, an old skateboard. So this was just a cubby that collects things. I really liked having that vacuum there to suck all the dust out. So typically I'll roll my big cart over here. I may change that on the new rendition on 2.0, but for the time being, this thing is pretty awesome. All right, for the first thing that I built in this garage was this workbench. The previous owner had a rinky-dink workbench and I tore that thing out, and I got this really awesome stainless steel table. I actually had a couple of them. I took the poles off and I attached it to this 2x4 bracing, or basically makeshift cabinetry. I don't want to call it real cabinetry, but this thing is awesome. Now, I don't call myself just a full-out woodworker. I like working on everything, and I'm working on car parts or RC cars, anything that's going to have grease or oil. I do it on this thing, right? This thing, I can just wipe off all of those contaminants, and it is freaking awesome. Above it is my hand tool wall. So these are your regular kind of shop tools that you're going to have. All of your wrenches, your adjustable wrenches here, all different pliers, needle nose pliers. We've got some lock wrenches. We've got all of my screwdrivers. We've got some shears. We've got different blades here. We've got a large kind of cut up blade. I use this mostly when I'm cutting branches. We've got a little scroll blade, my Japanese pull blade, which absolutely love this thing. And then we've got some hammers, some mallets. We've got some scissors, that kind of stuff on this wall. And then if you guys don't watch all my videos, that's okay. But I did do a Black Friday video, and one of the things that I had on there was these small toolboxes. So these are the little Cobalt toolboxes. As you can tell here, they're pretty tiny, but these things are super cool. Each one has a different purpose. This one has all of my blades here, all of my scalpels here. Above that, I've got all of my watch kit material. So whenever I need to make an adjustment on a watch, change a battery, change a link, I do that with this station. And then to the left of it are all of my stuff for the CNC machine. So I don't have room over there, so it sits over here, but I've got all of my power cables there. I've got all of my bits here, or most of the bits. And then we've got the different wrenches for the DeWalt router, as well as the CNC adjustment. So that right here, I've got some old skateboard pictures of me jumping over fire. I don't know why I have it, but it is really cool. Above that, I built this shelf, all different kinds of things. I've got random screws here. I've got my magnetic grabbers. These things are really awesome. I've got a soldering station. I've got my glues. I've got a Tybond 3 in the back, Tybond 2 in the glue bot. We've got our CA glue. And then I love containers. I don't know why. These are old creatine and protein containers, and they house a variety of different things. So we're not really going to go through those right now, but they've got a lot of cool stuff. And then once again, above that, I've got the wood rack. All right, right next to those toolboxes, I've got all of my eye protection right here. So I don't know, I've got close to 18 pieces of eyewear. Anytime the kids come in, the wife comes in the shop, or I've got a buddy helping me out, they grab eyewear from here, as well as my switch for the miter saw. I like having a switch on it. Obviously, the kids are a little older now, but when I had the smaller ones, I didn't really want them grabbing or being able to turn on power tools. So I put safety switches on almost all of them. And that, super smart. All right, right below the table, I've got a nice power strip where I can plug in all of my tools while I'm working at the metal workbench. I've got a pull-out trash can. So anything that I get dirty, I slide right into here, which is awesome. Now below that are my drawers, and each one of the drawers houses a different function. All right, this one right here has all of my different gloves, as well as my socket set bits. So this one's kind of a hodgepodge right now. I've got to work on it. Most of the gloves really aren't for what I do. I do not like wearing gloves when I work. All the things that I work with spin really, really fast, and I really don't want to get a glove caught in that and pull my hand into whatever I'm working on. So these are typically if I'm doing something on the car, something outside, those kind of gloves. Below here is my vacuum machine. I used to do a lot of different molding. So I've got a vacuum pump right there, a lot of different felt. I've got a, this is crazy, but I've got a fanny pack that I'll put on. So instead of having like a work belt, I'll use a fanny pack, throwback to the 90s. So that's pretty cool. Top left, this is all PPE. So in here is the big face mask that I wear. I've got couple different earphones. I've got different glasses, different masks. I've got paper masks. I've got glasses that haven't opened yet. So if someone comes into the shop, they know they have to put on PPE. So they know to go all the glasses there, and then all of the here and here. And then below that is just kind of a random drawer of things. In here I have hot glue guns. I've got all my stud finders found. I've got all of different kind of electrical stuff, some more small hand tools. Those live in that drawer right there. Now at the end of my workbench, I've got a small vise, which I always keep closed just in case kids are around. I always keep closed just in case kids are around. They like to smash things in here. I've got a whole bunch of these magnetic discs throwing screws in. These things are amazing. And then I've got my Jet drill press. Now this is a benchtop drill press, but I absolutely love this thing. I've got a little high just because I like to be eye level with what I'm doing. This thing is variable. It's got the digital readout. It is super cool. I built this awesome kind of table for it, or drill press table. Once again, it's got integrated T-track inside. The fence is fully adjustable. I've got all kinds of different clamps that I use for it. And then below that, actually should be over there on the wall, but I don't have room for it. This is the spline jig. So I use this when I'm cutting splines on picture frames, but it's a perfect spot to sit right here. It's out of the way. So it works out really, really great. And now we get to the last corner that we're going to show you today. After you get past the drill press, we've got our wall of extension cords. I've got a lot of different extension cords for different reasons. And then we've got all of my paint sprayers up here. We've got a whole bunch of just random jars of items. And then we've got all of my spray bottles. So typically I'll always have a degreaser, I'll have a window cleaner, I'll have some sort of ammonia, I'll have regular water, probably some water and bleach mix to clean different things. So that all lives over here. And then no garage should be complete without a garage fridge. So it's what a luxury to have this thing out here. All of my refreshments are out here, mostly water right now, mostly Liquid Death. But we also keep our meat and vegetables out here, but this thing is super cool. All right, then past the fridge, we've got all of our paint supplies down here on the bottom, as well as all of our electrical components, kind of sits in this container right here. We've got another belt sander that I'll typically pull out. I'll set it and lock it in on the workbench to use. That sits right here. And then in this cabinet, this is our consumables cabinet. I've got all of my paint, wood sprays, stains. We've got our lubricants, WD-40. We've got all of our caulking and silicones up there. Then to the left is mostly car stuff. So I've got all of my car wash stuff, car maintenance stuff, and then more spirits on this side, some Danish oil, some teak oil, all that's on this side. And then we get to show you chaos. All right, now this is the chaos. This is a little cubby that was here when I moved in, and it's full of just the most random things. We've got all kinds of electrical stuff here, all kinds of tape, Velcro, more tape, plumbing stuff, more tape, different kind of clamps right here. Then we've got some electrical stuff, some staples, more screws, springs, rivets, some propane, and then random metal brackets over here. And this is literally, I hate this cubby, but I use it all the time because these little things come in handy. All right, then below it, we've got a nice little storage thing of all kinds of bolts, washers, nuts, plumbing materials, anchors for your wall, stuff to hang things on. We've got different kind of hooks and just random things. And then right to the right of it is a whole bunch of electrical connectors. So spade bits, terminals, studs, etc., etc. So yeah, this is organized chaos. And now over to the workbench, the love of my shop. This thing measures in at 4 feet by 6 feet. It serves as the workbench, serves as the outflow table of my table saw, my assembly table. This thing is everything, and I absolutely love it. I think when you're doing a shop, you should focus on your workbench first. Get something where you can build things on, and then start working around that. Don't start working at a miter saw station first or the French cleat wall. Do a nice workbench first that you can either add on to or upgrade as you go. Obviously, I've upgraded this one. Most recently, I added this really great black melamine top or Formica top. I added T-track on this portion of the workbench. We added the router table or the router lift on this side. And this thing is a beast, but let's walk over and see this side. So we definitely have our high five logo. You guys know where we're at. Moving down, we've got lots of cool fun things over here. All right, in this drawer right here, we've got all of my chisels, my hand tools. We got different pry bars back here. I love peanut butter jars. I think they are the best. So down below, we've got markers. We've got different kinds of picks and pry tools for automotive. Same thing here, automotive ply tools. We've got all of my rasp and files. And then we have some cleaning stuff right here. So we got some toothpaste, we have different toothbrushes. I know it's not for teeth, it's for cleaning things up. And then moving right along, we've got all of our different containers, and each one of these containers houses something different. But I love having these things. I got these on sale like 2 years ago for Black Friday, but I've got all of my brush wire wheels right here. This thing is nothing but screws. This thing is nothing but bolts. This one right here is nothing but hardware, furniture hardware. So we've got knobs, hinges, pulls, locks, additionally. Below that are more hardware, or more bolts and nuts. Below that, we've got feet. So different kind of feet for cabinet projects or cutting boards. And then below that, we've got our Dremel kit. Moving over a little more cases. So we have our hot air gun. We've got our die set. We've got our skill saw. We've got an electric drill. We've got the golf cart charger. We've got the hammer drill, as well as a tile saw. So lots of storage on this side. This is kind of a grab and go. So typically I'll go from workbench to workbench. I'll kind of grab what I need and then get to work. Let's move to the back side. Now we move over to this side of the workbench. And the first thing you see is this monstrosity, this massive PVC pipe coming over. But this thing's super cool. We've got a 4-inch pipe coming all the way over. It wides out right here. The bottom goes to the table saw. The top goes to the router table, or basically the router lift that we put in here. We've got a switch for the router on this side. We've got our display window, or basically our access panel right here. We've got the router, which really the only thing I need access for at this point is to adjust the speed of the router. So typically I've always got it pretty fast, except when I'm running really big bits. I'll go ahead and slow down the router. But we've got a vacuum fit display panel, which is really awesome. Right below that, we've got all of our router accessories. So we've got all of our bits here. We've got everything to adjust the router. We've got all of the plates for the lift. We've got router bits in the back. Below, we'll have all of our sandpaper right here. We've got 60, 80, 120, 180, 240, 320, 400. And then in the back, we have some random as well as some high level. So anywhere from 600 to 1,000. And then below that, we've got more sanding things. So we've got sanding blocks. We've got router accessories. We've got all of the stuff for our palm router as well as our larger router. That all sits kind of down here. Now, typically, I don't really use the bottom shelves too much because I have the rubber or the foam sitting down here, and these are almost touching the ground, so they hit each other. So those aren't used very often. And then on this side, we've got all of our bits. So we've got Forstner bits, we've got drill bits, we've got spade bits, we've got a couple things for the T-track right here, which is fantastic. Below, we've got all of our brad nails for our gun, our staples. We've got a caliper kit. We've got all of our different blades for scroll saws, jig saws. We've got everything for our Dremel in this drawer right here. And then right here is all of our air tools. So I've got some more air line. I've got something to air up the tires with. I've got a impact driver right here, a smaller driver here. We've got a sprayer right there. We've got your oil that you've got to have, as well as some bits back here. And then on the bottom, we've got a large circular saw, a corded circular saw, as well as some large sandpaper for our drywall sander, which isn't in here. So that's this side of the workbench. All right, so for the front of the workbench, I've got a large cavity with a pretty big shelf in it. On top, I've got my Q-Tech 8-inch benchtop planer. It works pretty well. However, I do need to recalibrate it. And then I've got some really large casters on this side. They're about 10 inches. It's almost like those railroad casters, but the rubber is completely degraded and gone. So I'm thinking about a pulley system that I'm going to incorporate later. Down below, I've got my mineral oil bath. So most of my cutting boards will go through the mineral oil bath in this container. I've got a whole bunch of different PVC pipe on top. Been working on a few different projects. This thing is always loaded up with tarps. I do have a tarp out right now on my wood. I've got a black sheeting that I will put over the workbench whenever I'm doing any finishing or painting. And then below, another tub full of painting and plumbing materials. And then all of my tool bags right here. Now, most of my tools, they're for the shop. They don't go anywhere. But whenever I need to go to someone else's house or to the office, I'll load up a tool or grab a tool bag, I'll load it up, and then I'll take it. So it's a pretty big cavity. It's about 28 inches deep by 4 foot wide. So there's a lot of stuff that I could put in here. I've got some ideas that maybe upgrade later. I'd like a really big vise right here. I think that would be good. But for now, not bad. Now the front of the garage is the table saw. This is a saw stop. This is the 1 3/4 horsepower. I don't have 240 in the shop, so this thing is fantastic. It is the workhorse of the shop. Just about every project comes through the table saw first. We always have our hearing protection here. I keep all of my blocks here, my push blocks. The micro jig stays right here. And then below, we've got this really large cavity that we are going to be building a nice table here soon. So I look forward to that. But right here, here it is, the saw stop. This thing is awesome. I like my phalanges. This thing keeps them safe, so let's keep cutting. All right, guys, that's the shop tour. Now, I didn't show you everything because not everything is that exciting. On the sidewall over there is all of the kids' stuff, the sports stuff. We've got all of our stuff to change water in our fish tanks over there. And well, there's just no tools. So I didn't think it was that exciting. So let's just pretend that wall doesn't exist and we've got a 3-wall garage or a 3-wall shop. Now, additionally, above me, you can tell that I painted all of the ceiling black. I added 8 LED lights to get plenty of light in here. Now, it doesn't always show up on camera that way, but it is bright enough to do any project, even in the deep, dark CNC corner. Another thing that I didn't show you, right above here is an air reel. So I do have an air compressor outside of the garage. We actually built a shed most specifically for that and all of the outside things. So the shed is on this side of the wall. I've got a compressor that runs through it, into the attic, over the attic, and into the shop for air, and that has been a blessing. If you guys have air compressors in your garage, they are loud. Technically, I could film when that thing's on and you will never know. And that thing, I think that's pretty cool. So I like to keep working and not waiting for that thing to fill up as I'm going. So that's a bonus. Another thing you didn't see, or I didn't call out, you may have saw over here by the CNC machine. Down below where all of the wood is, I've got a bucket of yoga mats. Now, whenever my wife gets a new yoga mat, I usually get her old yoga mat. And those things are fantastic when you need to get on your knees, when you're building something small, when you've got to get on your butt and sit down and do something, put down a yoga mat. It will help you. That is a key in this shop. So one thing that you may have seen, I like to recycle things. Almost every piece of shop furniture except for this one has been built from recycled material from another project. And I think that's fun. I've got several projects that are on their 3rd rendition of used wood. So I think that's pretty cool. Either way, I'm gonna stop rambling. I hope you guys enjoyed today's shop tour. Hopefully you found it beneficial. Maybe you like knowing what happens behind the scenes. Maybe you're looking for inspiration for your shop. But either way, thank you for stopping by. My name is Andy, and have a great day.